After selling my company for $32 million, I threw a party. Just before the toast, I saw my son-in-law put something in my wine. When no one was looking, I quietly swapped glasses with his father. A few minutes later, he started. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. If I fail today, I'll lose my granddaughter to the cold and to a man who calls cruelty discipline. I had planned a toast, not a triage. Crystal chimed. Jazz murmured through the garden. And my terrace in Queen Anne looked like money finally getting to exhale. $32 million for tech consulting systems. 3 decades of grind turning into one long, slow breath. Friends laughed under the string lights. My daughter Sarah stood near the bar with her husband Marcus, who wore his smile like a high-end accessory. Expensive, fragile, and possibly counterfeit. The first hint came as small as a fingernail. A packet no larger than a sugar sachet, palmed in Marcus's hand as he drifted by the drink table. I caught it because business had taught me to watch a room the way a fisherwoman watches current. Not for the splash, but for the swirl. His fingers tilted. A dusting of something pale kissed the surface of my red wine, and he stirred with the easy grace of a man fixing a garnish. I didn't gasp, didn't shout. I breathed. Years of boardrooms and near ruins trained me for this precise muscle, the one that keeps a woman standing when the floor tilts. Through the French doors, my phone was still pressed to my ear. Robert Klein, my closing attorney, asking about wire timing on Monday. Monday morning works, I told him, watching poison bloom in my glass like a secret. Something urgent just came up. We'll finalize. Then I hung up. My granddaughter Emma, 7, long legs, shy smile, wasn't at the party. She was with a sitter in flannel pajamas. A dinosaur book face down on her chest if I knew her. My chest tightened anyway, because if I died tonight, that girl would grow up in a house where discipline meant standing on the back porch in January with no coat until the sobbing stopped. Sarah called it building grit. I called it cold. I drifted back out. Jazz, laughter, the faint sweetness of gardenias. Marcus's eyes ticked to my glass, still parked at the edge of the table where I'd left it. He was measuring distance now, from lip to throat, throat to heart. Barbara, he said brightly. The toast. Absolutely, I said. Let's make it memorable. I touched Sarah's elbow. Give me a hand, grabbing the good flutes. She grinned, glad to be useful. She has my height, but none of my ballast. A sail without a keel. Marcus flashed that precise smile. Your wine's right there, Barbara, he said, gentle pressure in velvet. Don't forget it. 2 minutes, I said. While Sarah ducked inside for Crystal, I eased into conversation beside William and Patricia, his parents. Midwestern warm, best clothes carefully chosen. William's glass of red sat 18 inches left of mine. Same sheen, same stem, same shape. I asked William how retirement felt. His teacher's hands came alive, describing fall without bells. As he spoke, I shifted the glasses with the tiny choreography of a host making space. My poisoned wine slid to his place. His clean wine slid to mine. 3 seconds. The kind of move you can pull off when you've spent your life rearranging a table so a negotiation feels like a dinner. Sarah returned with flutes and the prized bottle, breathless with purpose. Marcus tracked my hand as I lifted the now innocent glass, his gaze hungry for the next frame. He wanted the swallow, the cough, the collapse. He wanted a heart attack that would look like an old woman finally paying the bill. Friends, I called. Gather round. We formed a horseshoe around the table. My oldest friend, Beth Carter, with her careful poker eyes. Dr. Helen Martinez, who kept me moving with a stern kindness. A peppering of neighbors. A few folks who'd backed me when all I had were sketches and nerve. The lights made everyone beautiful. For a moment, I wanted to give them the night I'd promised. 30 years, I began, and my voice came out steady. Of building and believing. A few smiles. I let a beat pass. Also 30 years of learning who's with you And who's with your wallet?" Marcus's smile thinned one molecule. Sarah frowned, not following. "If I'm being blunt," I said, "someone at this table just tried to poison me." The garden went tight. You could feel the sound suck out of it. I turned to William, who had lifted his glass halfway. "Don't drink that," I said, sharp as a nail. "Please set it down." He froze. His eyes met mine, then moved to his glass, then to his son. Patricia's breath hitched. Beth's head tilted. Cop scan engaged, even though she wasn't a cop. Helen's hand hovered, ready to move. Marcus laughed. It came out too high. "Barbara, are you all right?" "I was on the phone in the living room," I said to the room more than to him. "I saw a small packet go into my wine. I saw it stirred. I switched the glasses when we gathered." "Ridiculous!" He tried indignation, but panic had already entered his undertone. "A bass note you only hear if you've listened to storms build. I was helping tidy the bar." "We can test it," I said, and reached toward William's glass. "If I'm wrong, I'll apologize to every one of you, starting with William and Patricia." Marcus moved. It wasn't a stumble. It was a play. His hip clipped the table. The glass went down like a violin shattering on a stage. Crystal into confetti. A spreading stain of red like a throat cut on stone. "Oh no," he cried. A second too late to be real. "I'm clumsy. I'm so sorry." The terrace held its breath. The smell of the wine went metallic. I dialed 911. My voice surprised me with its calm. "I need City PD and a paramedic. Suspected poisoning at a residence," I said, giving the address. No one drank it. "Evidence spilled." I didn't look at Marcus. I watched Sarah's face open like a woman having a tooth pulled, without anesthetic. "Mom," she said. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I watched your husband pour something into my glass." My tone stayed level. I'd learned long ago that anger gives away leverage. I'm saying he tried to make my death look like a stroke. I'm saying if I had died, Emma's life would get colder in more ways than one. "Don't drag Emma into this," Sarah snapped, reflex hardening. "You always make me the villain." "Sometimes you cast yourself," I said, softer than she expected. "You remember last January when you made her stand outside in her socks for spilling milk?" "That's discipline," she said. "She has to learn." "Not like that," I said. "Not ever like that?" Siren Doppler floated closer. The garden unfroze in small movements. Beth shifted her weight. Helen guided Patricia to a chair. A server appeared with towels and the white face of a 20-something who signed up to pass canapes, not triage a felony. Marcus went for the counterattack. "Barbara, if you truly believed I poisoned you, why didn't you confront me right away?" he asked, voice sharper now, like a blade looking for bone. "Because you don't stop a fire by yelling at smoke," I said. "You smother oxygen. You keep people safe first." "Maybe you missaw?" Sarah offered, desperate for a third option. "Maybe it was sugar in red wine," Helen said, eyebrow arching. "That's creative." Blue strobes lit the hedges. 2 officers stepped onto the terrace with the kind of body language that says they've been to both barbecues and nightmares. A paramedic team followed with a kit I could smell from here. Antiseptic and latex. I met the first officer's eyes. "I'm Barbara Hayes, homeowner," I said. "We've had an attempted poisoning. I witnessed the act. No one ingested. The liquid is on the stones there. The glass was knocked over by the alleged actor seconds after I said we'd have it tested." The officer's gaze slid to Marcus, then to Sarah, then back to the glass-slicked stone. "Anyone dizzy? Nausea? Tingling?" the paramedic asked the circle. William shook his head, pale but steady. "I was about to drink," he said quietly. She stopped me. "Sir, we'd like to check your vitals anyway," the medic said. William nodded, and Patricia pressed her lips together to keep from crying. That complicated parental cry that carries anger, fear, love, and shame. The second officer took notes. "Do you have the packet?" he asked. "No," I said, and everyone looked at Marcus. I don't have anything. He widened his eyes at the officer now. Big innocence like a billboard. Barbara's been under stress. She misinterpreted. She doesn't like me. We're going to ask for consent to search your person and your bag, the officer said, polite, professional. Sarah flinched. Is that necessary? She said. Sarah, I said, we can all be grateful we're not in the ER telling Emma a story she'd never unhear. Let them do their jobs. A small, hard silence. Then Marcus lifted his wallet from his pocket, jaw set. Fine, he said, but he held it to his body that quarter second too long. The officer noticed. They always do. He guided it open himself. Wallet, keys, phone, receipts. No packet. Check the trash by the bar, Beth suggested, voice mild as if she were asking for more ice. The second officer lifted the bin liner. A single paper twist clung to the side above the tide line of napkins. He tweezed it gently into an evidence pouch. Marcus's throat worked. Sugar, he said, but softer now. We'll send the liquid and the residue to the lab, the officer said. And we'll also take statements. The kinetic beat should have ended there. Police, paramedics, procedure. But the reversal arrived right on time, 50-some% through my evening, true to the cruel geometry of these nights. Ma'am, the first officer said, a touch apologetic. Without the actual liquid from the glass, and with the container empty, we're probably looking at a delayed toxicology and a report. We can't make an arrest tonight. I knew that going in. I'd worked mergers with less evidence than a hunch and carried them home on patience. A public scene and a poured-out glass meant the law would lag the truth. Fine. I wasn't here for the show. I was here for the pivot, officer, I said. Can you note that my granddaughter lives in their home, and that I consider her at risk? I'll follow up with family court on Monday. Sarah's eyes flared. You're not taking my daughter. I'm trying to keep her warm, I said. Maybe we can both agree that's a decent start, the paramedic finished with William. Vital stable, she said. But we recommend an ER check tonight to be safe. I'll drive him, Patricia said, chin set. She looked at me as if she wanted to say sorry for something that wasn't hers to own. Thank you, she whispered instead. Always, I said. Statements took an hour that felt like 10 minutes, and 10 years. People told the truth as they'd seen it. The packet, the stir, the push to toast, the perfectly timed stumble. Some were angry, some scared, some simply sad that a good night had been bent into the shape of an ugly one. When the last signature dried, the officers left with their little envelope of paper and my promise to call the first thing Monday. Marcus turned toward the door. Sarah, he said sharp. The syllable was a leash. She didn't move. She looked at me. For a flicker, I saw the girl she used to be. Knees skinned, eyes stubborn, heart good, brain dazzled by speed. We're going. Marcus pressed. Sarah swallowed. I'll meet you at home, she said. He stared at her. It had been years since she'd been the one to disappoint him. He went rigid white, then spun for the driveway. The night gulped his car and its angry engine. We were left with the mess. The literal one, wine glittering in the cracks, and the real one, which didn't sparkle at all. I waved off the catering captain's apologies. It's a flaw, I said. It's seen worse. Beth stepped up beside me. You did the right thing, she said. I did the only thing, I said. She nodded. That's often the same. The terrace slowly remembered it was a place for people to feel human. Someone restarted the jazz. Someone else fetched blankets for the older guests. We ate cake we didn't taste. We made quiet toasts with water. It wasn't the night I'd promised, but it was a night we arrived at together with a kind of rough grace. When the last car slipped away and the house settled, I walked William and Patricia to their sedan. Patricia gripped my sleeve. You saved him, she said. You saved my husband. I don't know how to carry both. Thank you, and I'm sorry. You don't carry the sorry, I said. That one's not yours. William looked at me over the roof of the car, a teacher's face, the kind that has seen 1,000 small salvations and 100 losses. If there's anything Monday, I file, I said. I won't blindside you. You'll read my papers before anyone else. He nodded once, the way people do when they choose a road they wish they didn't have to walk. Patricia put the car in reverse. I stood in the driveway and watched their taillights stitch themselves into the dark. Inside, I rinsed the last of the glass dust into the sink and looked at my hands. They trembled a little now that there was privacy to shake in. I poured coffee I didn't need and stared out at the terrace where my life had shifted a few degrees in an hour. I thought of Emma in her pajamas, the dinosaur book slipping down her chest, the soft huff of a girl's sleeping breath. I thought of January porches and socks like wet paper, of women who teach hardness by withholding the blanket. I thought of what a grandmother's last job might be. On the counter sat the leather portfolio with the sale contracts. $32 million worth of time I could spend the way a woman should spend the last good stretch, protecting small joy, hands steady over the match when the wind picks up. I wrote a note to myself in block letters big enough that even a shaken hand couldn't miss it. Call attorney 8 a.m., family court, temporary order. Coat. Then I added one more line, underlined. Bring Emma a coat. I turned off the lights, left the terrace to its crystal dust and wine ghost, and climbed the stairs. The house creaked the way old houses do, as if settling around a decision that's been made. I lay down in the dark, listened for my heart to quiet, and pictured my granddaughter's small shoulders under a good, warm parka. If I failed tomorrow, I'd fail her to the cold. Tonight I had not failed. I slept like a woman lying on an airstrip, eyes closed, body still, ears tuned for engines. At 5, the house lifted into gray. Coffee, shower, a quiet sweep of the terrace for any shard the crew missed. The stain on the stone had dried into a rust-colored map of nowhere. I took a photo anyway. Paper never forgets. Before 7, I called Robert Klein and left a message that didn't waste syllables on emotion. Witness statements available. Evidence bag logged by police. Petition for temporary order regarding my granddaughter. Trust documents to limit access to cash. I told him I'd accept aggressive. I hung up and called Dr. Martinez's service for the first appointment they could squeeze me into. If Marcus wanted to paint me as confused or drunk, I would give the judge a time-stamped portrait of boring health. By 8, my phone found me on its own. Patricia's name lit the screen. He's fine, she said before hello, the words rushing. The ER cleared him. Blood work normal. They kept him for observation and sent us home around 2. He's sleeping. Good, I said, and meant it with my bones. We gave our statements again, she added. I told them what I saw. Thank you. Wind moved over the receiver. Barbara, I didn't want to see this in my boy. I keep remembering you reaching for the glass, like it burned your hand. I didn't say anything about what a person can decide to do when they stare long enough at a pile of money. I didn't say anything about cold porches or January. I'm sorry this is in your house, I said instead. It won't be, she said, voice flattening. Not forever. We hung up. I wrote down the time of the call and a line summing it. Paper is a net. Memory is a leaky bucket. At 9, I was in Dr. Martinez's exam room, with my sleeves rolled and my shirt on a hook. She listened to my chest and watched my eyes the way a mechanic listens to a good engine she still doesn't quite trust. You look like a woman who slept next to a grenade, she said. Vitals are fine. Let's do blood, alcohol, talk screen, and a quick cognitive. Not because I think you need it, because the court might. I know, I said. She handed me 3 words to remember. Apple, table, penny, then asked me to draw a clock. 11:20. We traded questions about the day of the week, the month, where we were. I answered without forcing it, I didn't need to prove I was clever. I needed to prove I'd shown up. She tapped the pen against her clipboard. "You didn't drink much at the party," she said. "2 sips 2 hours before the mess," I said. "And I spit one of those into a napkin when I saw the packet. Charming. I'm a hit at weddings." She smiled despite herself. "I'll rush the lab. You'll have a signed note by noon that says you're boring." Boring is my dream. By the time I reached the parking lot, the smear had started without me. I know the shape of these things. A text thread that calls itself concern. A neighbor group that perfumes gossip as civic duty. On my screen, a forwarded post from the neighborhood app. Sad to see an elder woman in distress at a party last night. She accused a family member of poisoning. We should watch out for confusion and keep compassion in our pockets. Comments bloomed under it like mold. Beth sent a screenshot a minute later. "Marcus DM'd me that he's worried about you," she wrote. "He wants space for Sarah and Emma while you get help." "Expectation met," I replied. "Hold your fire. Everything in writing. Anyway, you good?" she called. "I will be," I said. "Help me gather signed statements from last night. Just the facts. Your eyes, not your opinions." "On it," she said, and hung up. Practical friendship is a clean tool. Marcus beat my lawyer to the punch. At 10, an email landed from a firm that specialized in the sticky edges of family trouble. The subject line wore a suit. "Notice to cease and desist defamatory communications." The body tried to look reasonable while baring its teeth. I had maligned their client with demonstrably false accusations, caused harm to reputation and business interests, threatened familial relations, and must refrain from contacting the minor child outside of scheduled visits. Scheduled visits, a phrase you use for a museum or a prisoner. 2 inches down the page sat the real point. If I persisted, they would seek an emergency protective order against me and alert appropriate services regarding elder mental and physical decline. It was all bones and no meat, but you can scare plenty of people with bones. I forwarded it to Robert with the original message chain from the night. Timestamps, call logs, the police report number, the photo of the dried stain. "Respond when you surface," I wrote. "I'm filing Monday regardless." At noon, Dr. Martinez's note hit my inbox like a clean bill of humidity. Blood alcohol 0.00. Baseline labs normal. Cognitive screen within age expectations. No evidence of acute confusion. I printed it and laid it next to the cease and desist. 2 pieces of paper that didn't like each other. Lunch was a sandwich I didn't taste. I chewed and made lists. Things that needed doing fell into 2 buckets. Shields for the girl and shields for the money. For the girl, petition for emergency order limiting exposure to unsafe discipline, pending hearing. Motion for temporary visitation while case reviewed. Affidavit from party witnesses. Photographs of the porch in winter. Printouts of texts I'd kept. The ones from Sarah about making her tough. The ones I'd tried to answer with lines about warmth and mercy. Quietly, I added a line to ask the court for a child advocate. If Sarah and Marcus wanted to cast this as a feud between adults, I would put a child-sized voice at the table. For the money. Hold the sale proceeds in a trust with conditions no one could wriggle through. Funds for Emma's health, education, safety, administered by an independent trustee. No distributions to her parents except reimbursements with receipts. If they wanted the cash more than the kid, they could choose. At 2, my phone buzzed. Robert finally. "Apologies," he said. "Sunday and I was at the lake with nothing but mosquitoes. Your voicemail was a morning gift. I read the cease and desist. It's bluster time to the gossip cycle. We'll file first thing. Do you want a narrow ask or a wide one?" "Wide," I said. "Temporary protective order regarding my contact with Emma. If I can get her after school and through bedtime at my place while this plays out, good. If not, supervised visits, but with a blanket." "A blanket?" He smiled into the word. "It's the principle," I said. "I want the record to show that warmth is the minimum." "We'll add conditions," he said. "No punitive outdoor exposure in cold weather. No physical punishment. If they bulk, they look like what they are. They'll call it meddling." "They'll be right," he said. "Judges prefer the kind of meddling that comes with documents. Send me the statements as you collect them. I'll draft tonight. We'll be at the clerk's office when the blinds go up." "Thank you. One more thing," Robert said. "You're going to hear from people who love you that this breaks families." "It's already broken," I said. "I'm trying to splint the smallest bone first." Beth arrived with her statement at 3. 2 paragraphs, not a word out of place. She'd seen the packet, the stir, the spill, the timing. She'd heard the words I'd said to William and Marcus. She'd witnessed the search of the wallet, the officer tweezing the paper twist from the trash. She signed, then handed me a second sheet from the catering captain. "She's not naming names," Beth said. "She writes what she saw." I thanked her. She glanced at the cease and desist on the table, rolled her shoulder like she was shaking off rain, and looked at me. "I'll say it once," she said. "You're doing the right thing." "I hope so," I said. "You know so," she said back, and left before I could argue with the comfort. At dusk, I drove to a store and bought 2 winter coats, one in Emma's size, one 2 sizes up. I added wool socks and a knit cap with a silly dinosaur on it. It felt like superstition and logistics at once. On the way home, I took the long route that passes Sarah and Marcus's street. Their porch light was on. Through the window, the blue wash of a TV flickered. I didn't stop. I am not built for ambushes. I am built for lines at the clerk's window and signatures that stick. When Monday hit, it did so with the bureaucratic clatter I've always found soothing. Forms slid across counters. I paid fees. I swore. I signed. The clerk stamped with a thump that felt like a friend, knocking. Robert's motion packet went into the stack, with a cover sheet that said emergency consideration requested, and the kind of brisk paragraphs that judges like to read. Dates, times, names, facts, no adjectives. We attached statements from Beth, from the catering captain, from Dr. Martinez, from William and Patricia. We included the photo of the stone, the police report number, the time-stamped text Marcus sent me after the party. We need space to think. Don't contact us until we tell you to. It was meant as a wall. In our packet, it was a door labeled Control. Expect a hearing within a week, Robert said in the hallway outside the courtroom. Sooner if the judge's calendar has mercy. In the meantime, we can ask for a narrow temporary arrangement today at Chambers. After school pickups with returns by 8. It's not custody, it's continuity. Let's try, I said. We sat on a wooden bench with 1,000 names carved into it. I studied the notches until a clerk in a navy sweater called Robert's name. He disappeared into a door marked Private and left me with the bench and the scratches. 15 minutes later, he came back wearing the look he wears when a plan lives long enough to breathe. "We have a temporary," he said. "Not the whole ask. The judge doesn't like grand gestures on a Monday, but you can pick Emma up from school 3 days a week. Drop her at their house by 7. No overnights yet. No discipline outdoors. Pending hearing. Exchanges curbside. No commentary at handoff. Violations are contempt." I exhaled in a way that felt like I'd been underwater. "That's a lot," I said. "It's something," he said. Sometimes something is most of everything. On my drive to the school, I rehearsed the only speech a woman gets to give a child on a Monday under a temporary order. It had to be short. It had to be gentle. It had to carry a coat. She came out with a backpack that seemed to weigh as much as she did. Her face found me and brightened the way a porch light brightens. "Grandma." "Hey, Captain," I said. "Want to help me with a very important errand?" It involves hot chocolate and a coat that makes you look like you belong in the Arctic." She slid into the front seat like she'd been doing it her whole life. The back was full of coats. "Mom says I'm not supposed to ride in the front," she said, eyeing the seatbelt. "Mom's right," I said, and moved her to the back. "I'm an old woman who forgets about airbags. Help me remember." She laughed, the small laugh that lives in a safe house. We drove to the shop that still sells cocoa the way it should be sold. Too hot, with too much whipped cream. I told her nothing that wasn't mine to tell. We talked about dinosaurs and math and the way a guitar sounds when it's out of tune. We tried on coats. The green one made her look like a sapling that could survive a blizzard. On the drive to her house, she said, "Mom made me stand outside in January because I spilled milk." My hand tightened on the wheel. "I know," I said. It was too cold. I pretended it was an adventure. She said, "I imagined I was a penguin." "Brave," I said. She stared out the window. I was still cold. I pulled to the curb in front of their house at 6:52. The temporary order lived in the glove compartment like a talisman. Marcus stood on the porch with a posture that could cut glass. Sarah was behind him, arms folded in a shape that meant defense first, thought later. Emma collected her backpack, her new green coat, and the dinosaur hat. "See you Wednesday," she said, Hope peeling the words open. "See you Wednesday," I said, "and bring your math. I've got a calculator that makes very satisfying beeps." She grinned and ran for the porch. Marcus stepped forward. "Curbside," I said gently. His jaw flexed. He stopped. "You are tearing this family apart," he said, volume low and precise enough to carry to me and no farther. "Do you understand that?" "I understand a girl needs a coat," I said, "and a warm place to drink cocoa." "You think this paper shields you?" He flicked his eyes toward the glove compartment like he could see through steel. "I'll take your papers apart like cardboard." "Maybe," I said. "We'll both do our best." Sarah's eyes found mine over his shoulder. For a moment, she looked 19 again. Wanting. Wavering. The muscle that chooses finally tired. I gave her nothing she could read as triumph or plea. Just a nod. She didn't nod back. Not yet. Emma grabbed the handle, then looked back like she'd remembered something important. "Grandma?" "Yeah. Can we build the rocket Wednesday?" The model had sat on my workbench for months. A patient plastic promise. "We can," I said. She disappeared inside with the coat swallowing her whole. The door clicked. The porch light brightened for a heartbeat, then settled. Back in the car, I sat longer than a woman needs to sit after a handoff. The order lay like a slim shield in the glove box. It felt both thin and enormous. I started the engine and eased away, resisting the urge to watch my mirror. At home, I did what I've always done when the field looks ugly. I put more paper between harm and the people I love. I signed the new trust documents Robert had drafted during the lull between hearings. I named an independent trustee. I wrote a letter that no one had asked for, and that might never be read by the person I wanted most to read it. Sarah, short and plain. "You are my daughter. I will say yes to every help I can give you. That does not make the house colder for Emma. When you are ready to build warmth, I will be here." Then I wrote one for Emma. Not a lecture, a map. If you are ever cold, and someone says it's to make you strong, you may call me. If you can't call, you may knock on any neighbor's door and say, "I need help and a blanket." People are better than you think. I put the letters in a drawer. I labeled the envelopes in block letters. I set the coats in the hallway, one on a hook, one waiting for a winter that would come whether we were ready or not. When the phone buzzed again, it wasn't a threat or an email with a subject line that needed a deep breath. It was a photo from Patricia, William in a hospital gown giving a thumbs up, cheeks flushed from embarrassment and not poison. "He says he owes you a glass of wine that doesn't end up on your patio," she wrote. "Tell him I'm buying," I replied. The house settled around me as the sun left. Monday had done what Monday does when you show up. Made a small, stubborn kind of order out of a bad weekend. It wasn't peace. It was paper. And sometimes paper is the only peace available. I took off my shoes and listened to the radiator tick like a slow metronome. Wednesday would come, and with it, Coco, a calculator that beeped, a rocket, and a girl in a green coat. Between now and then there would be pushes and pulls and more clever letters from people who liked bones. I poured a glass of water and raised it at the kitchen window where I could see the dark shape of the terrace stones. To paper, I said, and to the warmth it might yet purchase. Wednesday moved like a chess clock. I left work to the lawyers and put my hands where the order told me to. On a steering wheel, on a thermos of cocoa, on the handle of a coat zipper. Emma came out of school with the other second graders in a cheerful stampede. She saw me, lifted the dinosaur hat like a flag, and ran. I checked my watch like a woman learning to breathe, by numbers. The order gave me 3 afternoons a week until 7. You don't squander minutes when a judge counted them out for you. Rocket Day, she said, already buckling herself into the back seat, her backpack thumping like a second passenger. Rocket Day, I said, and fractions, but don't tell the rocket. We ate cocoa with spoons, assembled fin to fuselage, and tested the motor in the driveway, while the late light turned the street to butter. At 6:52, we were parked outside her house. The paper shield folded in the glove compartment. The second coat hung on the hook by my front door like a promise with sleeves. Marcus stood on the porch as if the concrete were his stage, and he'd been waiting for his cue. Sarah hovered behind him in a shape that used to mean leadership when she was a kid. Arms crossed, chin up. Now it meant she was trying not to be a storm and failing. Curbside, I said gently as Emma opened the door. Marcus took a step anyway. She left her homework, he said. We need to confirm what you're teaching her. Fractions, Emma said, fiercely loyal to the truth. His smile clicked into place. Sarah, take the bag. Emma hugged me quick, that precise second-grade squeeze that says, I love you, without embarrassing either one of us. Then she broke for the porch. Marcus latched onto her backpack strap like he was affixing a tag to luggage. He stared at me with that glittering, unblinking look a person gives a wall they intend to walk through. He didn't say, You're tearing this family apart, this time. He didn't have to. The sentence hung over the steps like a banner. I didn't respond to the banner. I drove away with my mirror tilted down to the asphalt. An old trick to keep yourself from piloting by regret. By morning, the neighborhood app had a new post. This one had a live attachment, a 12-second clip shot at my party. It started with me saying, Someone at this table just tried to poison me, and ended with the glass hitting stone. No packet, no stir, just my voice and calamity. The caption did the rest of the work. Rumor confirmed. Elder neighbor making wild accusations. Dangerous, sad, both. I could have fought the comments. People I'd said hello to while hauling trash cans up the hill had opinions now. Sympathy wrapped itself around speculation until even kindness smelled like a trap. I didn't engage. You don't argue with a wound. You staunch it and keep moving. Beth texted me a minute later. Don't look. I looked for you. Anything we can use? Just the usual brave library of cowards, she wrote back. Focus forward. Forward arrived on Friday in the form of a traffic cone and an assistant principal with a walkie clipped to her belt. The pickup line was the American compromise between civility and stampede. Groan. Adults slalomed around rules while mouthing, safety first. Parked where the temporary order told me to and waited for the bell. Marcus's SUV slid into a no-stopping, zone-like real estate invented by God. Sarah got out and headed for the door fast. Stepped from my car and held up a hand, palm out, as if I were trying to calm a skittish horse. We have an order, I said to her quietly. Today's mine until 7. She didn't look at me. She looked at the door Emma would be walking out of. "She's my daughter," she said, and the words came out like a rope pulled too hard. "Which is why I'm here," I said. "So she gets 2 gentle hours and a hot dinner." Marcus had his phone up at chest height, angled just so. "Documenting," he said brightly, "for the benefit of the microphone that would pretend to be neutral in case of confusion." The assistant principal, gray cardigan, shoes that could run, appeared like she'd been trained to materialize exactly when adults lost the plot. "Can I help?" she asked, and her tone was a steadying handrail. I held up the paper. "We have a temporary order authorizing my pickup Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays," I said. "Return by 7. No commentary at handoff." She read the lines like a person used to reading lines in the rain. She nodded. "Okay," she said to Sarah and Marcus. "We'll release to Grandma today. You can take any concerns up with the court, not the curb." Marcus kept recording. "We're concerned for her stability," he said. "This is destabilizing," the walkie crackled, the way systems crackle when they do their job. Emma came out flanked by a kindergarten teacher like a tugboat escorting a ship. Her eyes flicked between the 3 of us, then fixed on the assistant principal, like kids do when they need an adult who isn't inside the fight. She smiled at her. "Hey, buddy, you're going with Grandma today. Okay?" She nodded, relieved to be told the answer. She hugged me around the waist, then climbed into the back seat like home was a position. Sarah took a half step. The assistant principal didn't move, but somehow the air between her and Sarah thickened into a line. "Even the reckless don't cross at a school." "We're done," she said softly. "Everyone breathe." We breathed. I drove. In my mirrors, Marcus kept the phone up, tiny screen glinting as if he could film me into a different outcome. That night, the clip landed. 21 seconds this time. Cut to show me refusing to release Emma into her mother's arms. You couldn't hear the assistant principal's voice. The edit drowned it in traffic, and a licensed song played too loud. You saw my hand up, palm out. You saw Sarah's face pinched. You saw Emma behind the glass. A small blur. The caption did the rest. "She won't let the girl go." If people watched with the sound off and their sympathies on, they could let the clip choose for them. Some did. My inbox had a handful of hurt little letters by morning. "I thought you were better than this. Kids need their moms. Are you drinking?" I made coffee and answered none of them. At 10, the house phone rang. A voice I didn't recognize introduced herself as the woman in the blue ranch 2 doors down. "We've waved 100 times," she said. "But I don't think I ever told you my name. I won't now if it's all the same. I don't want anyone knocking at midnight. But I saw the porch thing last winter. Twice. I took a photo the second time because I thought I might have to call somebody. She was just a baby, Miss Hayes, and it was 10 degrees. I sat very still at the kitchen table. "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "I'm sorrier she had to live it," she said. "And for what it's worth, my doorbell camera caught some of Friday. The assistant principal. You can hear her tell Sarah that the paper decides. I know someone posted a clip without the sound. I can send you mine. I don't want to be in your business, but I don't want to scroll while a little girl stands on a porch in January either. We arranged a drop that felt like a spy novel written by a PTA. USB in an envelope under a flower pot by my front. Steps. 15 minutes later, I had a still photo from last winter. Emma in a thin t-shirt, the porch light flattening her into a cutout against the dark, and a clean audio track from Friday that held the missing sentence. "We'll release to Grandma today with the crisp authority of a bell." I sent both to Robert with a subject line that said, "Supplementals. Discipline corroboration plus pickup audio." He called before my email could finish leaving my outbox. "This helps," he said. "This helps a lot. The porch photo corroborates your claim of unsafe discipline. The audio shows compliance at school. I'll file a supplemental declaration today and request 2 things. A non-disparagement order, no more curated clips, and a neutral exchange location so the curb stops being a circus. Do it, I said. I'll take warm and boring wherever I can get it. Warm and boring arrived in exactly the way warm and boring always arrives, under fluorescent lights that hum. Monday morning, we stood at a plastic counter in a small courtroom. No oak, no drama. A judge in reading glasses looked over our papers, and then over us like a teacher deciding which students needed to sit farther apart. "Ms. Hayes," she said, "I have your temporary order. I also have this photograph and this audio. Ms. Hayes," she added to Sarah, who didn't correct the Ms. Sarah simply put her chin higher. "I have your counsel's letter and your video attachments. Here is how we will proceed pending the longer hearing. Pickups and drop-offs will occur at the police substation lobby 3 blocks from the school. No filming, no commentary. The child's winter attire will be appropriate at all times, or I will have words neither of you will enjoy. Ms. Hayes," she looked at me, "will continue 3 afternoons a week. Given the tone of the filings, she will also have one overnight each weekend, Friday to Saturday, with return by 10 a.m. The court prefers any risk of destabilization to err on the side of Coco and bedtime stories." Marcus's attorney rose. "Your Honor, we object." "You may object in writing," the judge said without looking up. "I will read your objections on paper. I will not preside over recut social media." A clerk slid copies of the new order across the counter. The thump of the stamps sounded like small drums. It wasn't triumph. It was procedure. And for once, procedure felt like a hand at my back. We left by separate doors. The police substation lobby was exactly as unpoetic as you'd think. Old posters about bike helmets, a vending machine with 2 dead rows, a calendar 2 months behind. It was perfect. Exchanges happened there without witness or audience. Just a board sergeant who signed a sheet with a date and a time. Marcus lowered his phone in that lobby because even he could hear the echo of how bad it would look to aim a camera at a bulletin board about safe neighborhoods. On the first Friday overnight, Emma arrived carrying a stuffed animal she hadn't shown me before. Because in her house, softness had to be privately negotiated. She put it on my couch with ceremony. "Her name is Jupiter," she said. "She's brave in storms." "We should get her a coat," I said. She grinned and handed me the green one I'd bought, the sleeves still big enough to promise growth. We ate spaghetti and oversalted it and called it perfect. We built the rocket. We finished fractions. At 9, I found the spare blankets and layered them on the fold-out like a fortress. I wrote a note and taped it to the lamp. "If you wake up scared, I am in the next room. If I snore, you may throw Jupiter at me gently." She slept. I watched the red numbers on the stove clock change and told myself not to waste a minute by fearing the next petition, the next clip, the next sideways call, from someone who had an opinion and a free afternoon. I was here. She was warm. The judge had turned the volume down on the curb. Of course, the pushback came. It came Saturday morning, as all rearguard actions do, while we were making pancakes a little too thick. A certified letter slid under my door's threshold, all starch. Marcus's counsel had filed a motion to compel my full medical history and an accounting of all controlled substances present within the home. They'd folded in a demand for my financial records to assess potential undue influence. When the law fails to find a fact, it tries to find a doubt. I scanned the pages, then flipped the letter over and drew a tiny rocket. Emma leaned her pancake over like a moon. "Launch?" she asked. "Launch," I said, and we carried the rocket to the park. The air had that early winter bite that feels like a clean sheet. A few kids in knit hats watched us from a picnic table, kicking their sneakers against the bench in rhythm. I set the rocket on the pad and handed Emma the igniter, as if I were passing her a priest's spell. "Count down," I said. She held Jupiter under one arm like an engineer and called the numbers down, steady. 10, 9, 8. At 3, she looked at me to make sure I was still there. I nodded. At 1, she turned the key. The rocket leapt, a pencil line against a tin sky. And for 2 seconds, the world did the thing it sometimes still does, if you pay attention. It got simple. Fire, air. A small girl in a too-big coat, tracking a bright point with her body and her hope, trusting that a thing you build can climb, and that what climbs can come back down in one piece. The chute popped. The rocket drifted. She ran. I jogged because I am an old woman who pretends she isn't when there is someone worth pretending for. She caught the string and held the body of the rocket to her chest, the way you hold. "Proof. Again," she said, "because the best parts of life make you greedy." "Again," I said, "for as long as the order will let us, for as long as the court will allow, for as long as paper can hold." Hearing day smelled like dry paper and old carpet. I wore the one suit that makes me look like a woman who tells the truth, even when the truth goes to ground. Robert set our folder on the table with a neat thwap. I could have recited the tab labels by heart. Temporary order, witness statements, the porch photo, the school audio, Dr. Martinez's notes. Marcus arrived behind his attorney like weather behind a front. Cool, polished, inevitable. Sarah kept her eyes on the carpet as if meaning could be found in its pattern if you stared long enough. No phones in the courtroom. It made everyone more human and more dangerous at once. The judge came in with readers perched on her nose and a face that said Mondays had taught her plenty about people. Cases ahead of ours banged along. Rent disputes, a custody handoff that needed a translator more than a lawyer, a pair of teenagers who'd found out love gets expensive when you involve glassware. Then our docket number landed. "Counsel," she said, "I've read the filings. Ms. Hayes's motion for continuation of the temporary order with overnights. Respondent's motion for modification and sanctions. I have 1 hour before this calendar collapses. Use it well." Robert stood. "Your Honor, we asked to keep the structure in place and extend one overnight. The child is thriving. We have corroboration of unsafe winter discipline and audio from the school confirming compliance with the court's curbside guidance. We also request a non-disparagement order. Social media has been weaponized." Opposing counsel rose with that particular blend of sorrow and sharpness they teach at seminars. "Your Honor, yesterday evening we received the lab report regarding the alleged poisoning. The residue retrieved from the refuse was vitamin C and tartaric acid, common wine additives. No toxins, no narcotics, nothing consistent with attempted murder. Police have closed the incident as unfounded. We move to strike Ms. Hayes's filings as baseless fear-mongering by an elderly woman under stress. Further, we submit a video from the event showing Ms. Hayes moving glasses before any toast, which undercuts her narrative." Robert leaned toward me. I felt his shoulder tense. He whispered, "Breathe." The judge nodded to the clerk. A small screen came alive. Our lives reduced to pixels. The courtroom watched the familiar terrace. The clip was tight, selective, cruelly efficient. You saw me reach toward the table. The glass trade, quick and practiced. You did not see the packet. You did not see the stir. You saw a woman arranging objects on a stage, and then calling the police after the curtain fell. The lab memo appeared next. 2 paragraphs in bureaucratic gray. Residue consistent with ascorbic and tartaric acid. No acute toxin identified. Sample compromised by environmental exposure. The judge turned to me. "Miss Hayes, did you move the glasses?" "Yes," I said. "I believed one had been adulterated. I switched to prevent harm." "And you believed that based on observation?" I said, a small packet emptied into my drink. A stir. The judge tapped her pen. "But you don't have the packet." The liquid was spilled. "The lab tells me they can't find a poison. Only wine chemistry." "They don't have what was in the glass," I said. "They have a ghost." She looked at me for a quiet 5 seconds. "Family court can't adjudicate ghosts." she said at last. "We can only read paper and watch what people do with their children." Opposing counsel slid another document forward like a magician producing a dove. "Additionally, Your Honor, the porch photo Ms. Hayes submitted is undated. We have an expert declaration that the metadata is unreliable, possibly altered by transfer between devices. We do not concede that anything unsafe occurred. We do concede that Ms. Hayes has engaged in a campaign to portray my clients as monsters." Robert didn't blink. "Your Honor, the audio is clear. The school released the child to Ms. Hayes pursuant to your order. The video the respondents posted edits out that sentence and implies a snatch. That is disparagement aimed at a grandmother. But more importantly, it uses the child as content. As for the photograph, we'll happily subpoena the original doorbell device. We also ask for appointment of a child advocate. Let's reduce this to the simple: warm clothes, safe handoffs, boring routine." The judge let the room breathe around our words. She took off her glasses, set them on the bench, and rubbed the bridge of her nose with the slow patience of someone picking a lock without the right tools. "Here is the problem," she said finally. "The alleged poisoning is not for me today. Without a lab result that says poison, and with chain of custody as ragged as the carpet under your feet, I cannot anchor relief to that. Allegations of winter discipline. On this record, I am concerned, but not convicted. The audio helps. The photo is weak evidence, but not nothing." She looked at me, not unkind. "Ms. Hayes, I appreciate paper, I do. But paper that can be printed without context is a sword as often as a shield. You are asking me to increase overnights based on a picture and competing stories. I won't. Not today." There it was, the hinge of the book. "Accordingly," she continued, "the court modifies the temporary order as follows. Weekday pickups continue, 3 per week, return by 7. The weekend overnight is suspended pending further corroboration. Exchanges remain at the substation. No filming, no posts about the child or about each other until the next hearing. That's my non-disparagement. Violations will result in contempt. I will appoint a child's attorney. Both households will enroll in a parenting class focused on non-punitive discipline in cold weather climates. Yes, counsel. I know how that sounds. Do not test my patience. We reconvene in 6 weeks. Between now and then, I expect less theater and more thermometers." The gavel wasn't necessary. The stamp from the clerk stung anyway. We filed out like people who'd just been told the storm didn't count because it didn't register on the official instruments. In the hallway, Robert exhaled. "We took a hit," he said plainly. I liked him for that sentence. "No sugar, no tartaric acid." She cut the overnight. I said, "That's the marrow." "She also gave us a child's attorney and a class both houses have to take," he said. "That's oxygen. If your daughter treats warmth like an option, a neutral will notice." Opposing counsel drifted past with a smile that wanted to be small and failed. Marcus's eyes flicked to mine. There was relief in them and triumph and something else. Fear, maybe, that I wouldn't stop. He had reason. Outside, the sky had that thin winter blue that feels like a polite refusal. Robert touched my elbow. "We pivot," he said. "To what?" "To what we can prove without a lab," he said. "Routine compliance." The kid's voice. Careful, not coached. The pediatrician teachers. If they keep the house cold, someone other than you has noticed. And if they don't, then we've held the line anyway. I went home and put the overnight blanket back in the hall closet, like a flag retired without ceremony. Then I made a list titled Pivot, because sometimes you have to talk to yourself in capital letters. Stop chasing poison. Family court won't. Start logging the small things judges like. Bedtime, homework completed, meals eaten, coats worn, temperatures. Call the pediatrician during my pickup window. Ask for a routine check with a flu shot. Say nothing dramatic. Let a third party look with their own eyes. Ask school for any notes about winter gear. Not a fishing expedition. A question. Enroll in the class before they do. Bring a notebook. Take it seriously. Write to Sarah without accusation. Offer help that warms, not help that wounds. Hold your tongue. Let the silence do some of the talking. I started with what was in front of me. On pickup day, I packed a small digital thermometer in my pocket. The kind you use for the weather, not a fever. When Emma hopped in the back seat, I handed her the green coat like I always did. "Weather report?" I asked, and she grinned and stuck the thermometer under the coat for our private little science project. 58 in the car, warmed to 68 by the time we got home. I wrote it down with the time and didn't draw arrows to anyone's character. Judges like numbers that behave themselves. We went to her pediatrician under the cover of Practical Life. A flu shot and a check for the cough her teacher had mentioned. In the exam room, I kept my mouth out of the doctor's way. When she asked Emma what winter was like at her house, she answered like kids do when an adult's voice is softer than home. "Sometimes I have to be brave on the porch," she said, matter of fact. "But Grandma says you can be brave with a blanket." The doctor looked at me, then back at her. "Grandmas are smart," she said. "I'll write down that you need layers when it's cold. That's the rule in my office. Layers are not optional." She typed with a decisiveness that sounded like heat. At school, I asked the assistant principal for a quick word away from the door. "If you ever notice her underdressed, would you mind emailing me and her parents the same note?" I said, "I'm trying to keep everyone honest and warm." She nodded. "We already do that for a few kids," she said. "I'll add her to the list. No drama. Just please send hat and gloves." That night, I registered for the class the judge had ordered and printed the receipt. I sent a short email to Sarah with the subject line, "Parenting Class Enrollment," and nothing else inflammatory inside. The date, the time, a copy of the judge's order, and a line that said, "I'm bringing snacks. Sit with me if you want." It was the closest I could get to an olive branch without carving it from bone. She didn't reply. Marcus did. "We will not be attending your performance," I forwarded his reply to her. Robert without comment and added my receipt to the folder the judge already liked. The class met in a municipal room that smelled like coffee that had died bravely. 8 parents. One instructor with a sweater that had seen more winters than any of us. She did not smile like a brochure. She said words like core temperature and executive function and attachment with the bored confidence of a mechanic discussing belts. I took notes like a first-year engineer. In the break, a father in a contractor's jacket looked at my page and whistled. "You could teach this," he said. "I could sell it," I said. "Teaching takes a better person," he laughed. The honest kind. Halfway through, my phone buzzed with a message I didn't read until the coffee break ended. It was from the pediatric office. A brief visit summary available via portal. I opened it and saw in clean bullet points 2 paragraphs that did more work than 1,000 whisper campaigns. Patient presents with adequate nutrition, no acute distress. Caregiver reports prior exposure to cold as discipline. Care plan includes reinforce warm attire, avoid punitive exposure, monitor for recurring cough in cold months, education provided to family, RE. Hypothermia risk in children. No adjectives. Just air and temperature and the way small bodies behave when adults forget the difference between grit and harm. Robert called as I walked to my car. "We got the appointment of the child's attorney," he said. "Interview next week. Low-key. She will visit both homes." "Good," I said. "She'll find a blanket at mine." "And likely at theirs," he said, "now that everyone's on notice." "Let them discover insulation late," I said. "The point is warmth, not victory." He laughed softly. "Careful," he said. "That sentence makes you sound like the adult in the room." The lull did not last. "Reversals travel in packs. On Friday, a letter landed from the police. Case closed. Insufficient evidence. No outrage. Just the bureaucratic shrug of a system that can't work with ghosts. The neighborhood app recycled the old clip with a new caption. Police clear family. Rumors were cruel. The comments nodded like those dachshund toys in the back of cars. I set the letter on my kitchen counter beside a dinner plate and ate around it. Paper can be a meal or a poison depending on how much you swallow. I put the letter in the folder, wrote the words, "Case closed," insufficient in block capitals on the edge of a sticky note, and underneath it a quieter line, "Keep going." At 7 on the dot, I walked Emma to the substation lobby with her backpack and her green coat, and Jupiter tucked under her arm like a silent co-defendant. Sarah and Marcus arrived on time. Taught, perhaps by calendars and judges that time can be a law. No cameras, no commentary. The sergeant on duty looked up from a crossword and gave us all the kind of nod a person gives a neighbor at a mailbox. Emma hugged me quick, then leaned in like a conspirator. "We made a chart," she whispered, "for coats and socks and hats. It's on the fridge." "That's a very powerful place," I said. "Mom put stickers on it," she said. "She says she wins if there are 10 in a row." I looked at my daughter over her head. Sarah didn't look away. The muscle that chooses had twitched this week. Maybe the class got in. Maybe a neutral voice did what blood could not. Maybe the judge's phrase, "less theater, more thermometers," had wormed under her skin. "Good," I said to Emma. "I like a game where warm wins." We exchanged. We signed. We left. Outside, the early dark put its hand on the city. I drove home with the heater humming and the radio off, thinking about the line between truth and proof, about how many good fights die at that border, about the small mercy of a child's coat hook holding weight. I had lost the overnight. I had lost the drama of a charge that the law could not see, but the house was warmer at both addresses, at least for a week. The child would meet a lawyer whose only client was her small voice. I had turned from argument to architecture. Routines, receipts, evidence that looks like nothing until it's stacked into something a judge can lean on. If the first half of this war had been built from glass and noise, the second would be built from blankets and logs and the kind of paperwork that makes a liar tired. I washed my suit, folded it into its plastic like a retired banner, and set out my Thursday clothes, the kind you wear to pick up a girl. Make spaghetti and tape a note to a lamp that says, "If you wake up scared, I am in the next room." Cold came early and mean, the kind that tests windows for weakness. I kept the green coat by the door and my folder by the phone, because winter and paperwork both like to arrive unannounced. The first hit wasn't a person. It was a meter. Tuesday morning. A man in an orange vest tagged my gas line with a red notice. "Service transfer requested." I hadn't requested anything. He shrugged like a messenger who'd learned to be bulletproof. "Order says turn off tomorrow at 6 a.m., ma'am," he said. "Name on the work ticket is yours. Different callback number." I called the utility, navigated the maze, and landed in a voice that insisted the request was mine, until it wasn't. "We see a transfer to the new occupant," the rep said. "Verification was a phone passcode." "I don't have a phone passcode," I said. "You do now," she said. "It was set yesterday." I put the phone on speaker, opened a notebook, and wrote "Fraud Stop Util" in the margin like a woman labeling a leak on a hull. It took an hour and 2 supervisors to staple reality back to my address. When the hold lifted, the rep softened. "Happens more than you'd think in family disputes," she said. "People weaponize comfort." "They always have," I said, and meant blankets and bank accounts and the way a thermostat can be a cudgel. Hit 2 arrived before lunch. My bank flagged the new trust as Elder Exploitation Review, frozen pending concerns raised by family. The screen at the branch told me what the teller didn't have the heart to say. "You look like a story in our training manual. Funds held. Checks delayed. Bill pay locked. plastic declined at the pharmacy for the kind of small purchase that wraps embarrassment around a woman like a wet towel. I called Robert from the sidewalk. "We're seized," I said. "Utility almost off. Bank on ice." He didn't waste breath on surprise. "I'll email the bank's compliance," he said. "You're not their first 60-something with paperwork and an opinionated son-in-law. The hold will thaw, but not fast. I can carry my hours for a week. After that, I like my mortgage. We should assume they'll try to starve you into a deal." "Let them try," I said. But my voice knew the price of courage when it's paying retail. We still had our routine. Wednesday pickup, cocoa, fractions. The rocket sitting on the workbench like Patience. Emma ran to the car and clicked her belt like a professional. She had 2 stickers on her coat chart. "Mom says 10 wins," she reported. "I like a game with a good prize," I said. We built the second stage and wrote our names on the body in small letters because big ones felt like a dare. At 6:58, I handed her back at the substation lobby. The sergeant on duty looked up from his crossword, initialed the sheet, and gave us the nod that had started to feel like a blessing. Boring is working. Thursday at dawn, I woke to a knocking in my chest. Not pain, more like a fist reminding wood it was once a tree. I sat up, breathed, counted. It passed. I walked the long way to the kitchen and made oatmeal a cardiologist would applaud. On the counter, the red utility tag glared from the trash, like a souvenir of almost. I put a hand on the counter to steady the tilt in the floorboards. It wasn't the house. It was me. Dr. Martinez worked me in between a sprained ankle and a flu line that looked like a parade. "You look like a woman running on fumes," she said, cuff on my arm. "You're fine for your age, which is both good news and an insult. I'm ordering a Holter monitor for a day. Humor me." "Humoring you keeps me alive," I said. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. "And keeps you looking like a boring woman in front of a judge," she said, which is better than being dramatic and dead. Hit 3 landed hard and wrong on Saturday. My phone jolted with a text at 8:12 a.m. from an unknown number. "Ambulance at 14th and Maple, Blue Ranch. Little girl wheezing. Thought you'd want to know. 2 doors down." I was out of the house before the second sentence finished. The neighbor's door was open. Cold poured into a foyer that smelled like panic and winter. In the living room, Emma sat upright on the couch, eyes wide, chest working like a bellows. The sound was a high little saw in a small throat. Sarah hovered, white around the mouth. Marcus stood with the phone and a stance that said, "Control like a prayer." A paramedic knelt at Emma's level, voice even as a metronome. "We're going to help your lungs remember how to open," she said, tucking a mask on her face. Steam and medicine made a cloud between them. The partner took vitals that would be numbers in a report by noon. I kept my hands to myself and my mouth closed. I am a woman who wants to scoop and run. I have learned the uses of standing still. "What happened?" the paramedic asked without judgment. Marcus said, "She woke up like this." Sarah said nothing. The second paramedic nodded toward the coat hook. No coat hung there, no hat, no socks in the basket by the mat. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She had eyes. When they lifted Emma onto the gurney, she reached for me with a hand that didn't mean to. "Grandma," she said around the mask. I put my fingers on her shoulder and gave her the exact pressure that says, "I am here without telling anyone how I feel about who isn't." The paramedics headed to the rig. I followed to the sidewalk. Marcus blocked me with his body. "You're not family," he said, low and quick. "Not for this. We'll meet you there if we want you." I looked at Sarah. She met my eyes and then didn't. "I'll call you," she said to the pavement. I didn't argue with a moving ambulance. I took a picture of the frost on the grass and the fog of breath in front of my face to timestamp the weather and the hour. Then I got in my car and drove to the hospital's public entrance, because there's more than one definition of family, and I was here for all of them. They took her through the doors I couldn't pass. I planted myself in a plastic chair under a TV that believed in daytime court shows. My heart ticked in my chest, like an old mantel clock, counting the loneliness between chimes. I texted Robert. ER. Wheezing. No coat by door. Paramedic saw. He texted back 3 words. Emergency order today. We'll need the visit summary. He added. Vitals. Diagnosis. Discharge instructions. Anything that uses the word cold with a verb. I'll draft a motion for temporary custody on medical grounds. Courthouse has a Saturday judge. It's a coin toss, but better than waiting for Monday while they film their feelings. Do it, I wrote. I paced the length of the waiting room like a woman worried about wearing a groove. After an hour, Sarah came through the doors with the careful swagger of a person pretending the ground isn't tilted. It's bronchospasm, she said. They gave her breathing treatments. She's okay. Good, I said. The word felt like a warm stone. Asthma, I asked. They don't think so, she said. Trigger is cold. The doctor said no outside time if she's coughing. Her jaw flexed. She said layers, like a lecture. Lectures save lives when they come with instructions, I said. Marcus was not with her. Some victories are temporary. Some absences are tactical. Sarah shifted her weight. She asked for you, she said without looking at me. In the ambulance. I know, I said. I was there. She nodded once, sharp enough to cut a finger. We're going home, she added. Don't show up. I can't, not today. I won't, I said. Hug her for me. Tell her Jupiter would have hated the masks. She almost smiled. Almost. I took my almost and went hunting paper. The nurse at the desk wouldn't give me the discharge note without a parent. That was fair. But she would hand it to Sarah if I stood 6 feet away. And she did. Sarah folded it, then unfolded it, then looked at me like a woman about to hand over a part of herself. You'll need this for whatever you're going to do, she said. I'm going to try to keep her warm, I said. I took the paper and did not thank her with more than my eyes. Robert was waiting in my driveway with a printer that runs on adrenaline. We turned the kitchen table into a triage unit. Motion, declaration, exhibit list, timestamps, weather log, pediatric notes, hospital instructions, avoid cold exposure, use scarf, hat, coat, monitor for recurrent wheeze, seek care if breathing labored, follow up with primary. We added a paragraph I hated for its necessity. Grandmother prepared to segregate sale proceeds to reside under court supervision, to accept home visits, to provide child with consistent warm environment and medical compliance, seeks temporary custody pending full hearing. It felt like undressing in public. It felt like the price of the right fight. Are you sure? Robert asked, pen hovering. This puts your money under a microscope and your house on a schedule. It puts a coat on a girl, I said. I do it. We drove to the courthouse where weekend law is dispensed by a rotating saint, whose patience is inversely proportional to the number of emergencies. We filed. We waited. The judge on duty was already neck-deep in restraining orders, a foster placement, a landlord with a lock and a conscience. At 4, a clerk took our number and our packet through a door marked Chambers. At 5, she came back out with an expression designed to tell no stories. Judge is reviewing, she said. He'll either sign tonight or push to Monday morning. Children don't keep Monday hours, Robert said. It wasn't a complaint. It was a sermon with one sentence. Neither do judges, she said. Not unkind. But printers run out of ink on Saturdays, too. We went home and waited for the phone to be the phone that breaks a world or blesses it. While we waited, a courier arrived with a thick envelope from Marcus's counsel. Emergency motion to limit contact, alleging I'd invaded a hospital, undermined medical decisions, harassed staff, and weaponized cold weather to humble a mother. They'd stapled a screenshot of my utility hold like proof of instability, as if someone intent on comfort couldn't also make calls to keep the heat on. "Do you want to read this now?" Robert asked. "I want to build a bed," I said. I stripped the fold out and put on fresh linens, tucked a spare blanket under the foot, laid Emma's silly dinosaur hat on the pillow like a flag from the friendliest country on earth. I set Jupiter on the nightstand. The house hummed like a big sleeping animal. I sat down and felt the day in my knees. At 8, the phone didn't ring. At 9, it didn't ring. At 10, Robert squeezed my shoulder. "If he doesn't sign tonight, he'll open your file at 8 a.m. sharp," he said. "I've seen this movie," I said. "I've learned not to love the endings," he said. "Then love the work," he said. He left me to my quiet. Just before midnight, another hit. Small. Mean. My neighborhood app pinged with a post from a burner account. Sad to see a grandmother exploiting a child's normal winter cough for attention. "Some people can't accept aging, no names. Enough detail to be ugly." Comments clustered like wasps. I closed the app. I am a grown woman. I have lived through rumors and their metallic taste on my tongue. I drank water. I checked the thermostat and the locks. I put the court folder by the door like a packed bag. At 12:37 a.m., a sound I haven't heard since my daughter was small stitched me upright. A small damp knock. A child's rhythm. Polite and desperate. I crossed the living room with old woman care and opened the door to an inch. Emma stood on the stoop in pajama pants and a sweatshirt, cheeks bright with cold. Jupiter under her arm like a passport. "Mom fell asleep," she said, voice small and steady. I coughed. I was scared. I walked. The rules are clear about overnights. The rules are less clear about girls in the dark. "Did anyone see you leave?" I asked. She shook her head. "Is the porch light on?" I asked. She nodded. "I turned it off so I could see stars," she said, "because children are poets, until we make them accountants." I looked past her at the night that eats and gives back. I made a decision I will defend in any court that still recognizes a pulse. "You're home," I said. I pulled her in and wrapped her in the quilt my mother pieced out of shirts I used to wear to a job I no longer own. I set Jupiter on the pillow like a guard. I wrote the time on a notepad, 12:39 a.m., because this house runs on Love and Records now. I texted Robert 2 words. "She's here." 5 minutes later, my phone lit with a number I didn't know. The clerk's voice sounded like coffee at the end of a shift. "Ms. Hayes, judge has reviewed. He's issuing a temporary protective order pending Monday's hearing. Child may remain with you tonight. Exchanges to occur at 9 a.m. at the substation. No commentary, no contact except counsel. Paper to follow by email. Thank you," I said, and sat down on the edge of the fold-out like the floor had decided to be kind to gravity. On the bed, Emma's breathing thickened, then softened into the sleep that only safe rooms sell. I turned the thermostat up 2 degrees, because I could. Then, I sat at the kitchen table and signed the one document the court hadn't asked for. A letter to my daughter. Sarah, she knocked. I opened. "If the court says I was wrong, I will take the consequence like a woman who can still tell a door from a wall. I am prepared to put every dollar behind the same principle. Warmth first. The money will sit in a trust with locks you pick with parenting, not with cleverness. If you want the key, I will hand it to you in a class, in a lobby, at a bench outside chambers. Bring a coat. Bring your hand. We will teach it to choose." I put the letter with the others in the drawer. No one opens unless they mean it. Then I watched the red numbers on the stove clock breathe. Siege is a noise, but crisis is a hush. I sat in that hush and waited for the morning stamp and the next hallway, and the hard work a good peace demands. Morning came with the kind of blue that makes courthouses look honest. I brewed coffee I didn't need, checked that the temporary order had arrived by email. It had, with a timestamp that made midnight seem merciful. and watched Emma breathe under the quilt until the red numbers on the stove told me it was time. At 8:58, we were at the substation lobby, Jupiter under her arm like a passport. The sergeant signed the sheet and the new paper, last night's grace turned into law, rode in my pocket like a warm stone. Sarah and Marcus came in on time. No phone, no speeches. Sarah's eyes went to the quilt fold crease etched across Emma's cheek and softened in a way I didn't expect and didn't trust yet. "We have court at 10, she said. "I know," I said. "I'll see you there." The courtroom ran on stamps and patience. The child's attorney took the seat nearest the judge with the air of someone who has learned that children tell the truth sideways. Robert set our packet down. ER visit, discharge instructions, pediatric note about layers, the utility fraud stop, the bank thaw, last night's emergency order. Across from us, Marcus's counsel arranged their stack to look taller. The judge read for a long 30 seconds. "I have your midnight order," she said without looking up. "Ms. Hayes, the clerk tells me the child arrived at your door alone at 12:39 a.m., is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." She set the paper down and finally met my eyes. "You opened." "I did." She nodded once as if marking the location of a lighthouse. "Counselors, here is how we will proceed. We will take brief testimony. I will hear from the child's attorney. Then we will talk about heat." Marcus's lawyer went first, smooth as a fountain pen. "Your Honor, our clients dispute any suggestion of neglect. The child experienced a transient bronchospasm common in winter. Any walk to the grandmother's house was a disobedience, not a rescue. We moved to vacate the emergency order and revert to the prior schedule." Robert stood. "Your Honor, hospitals do not hand out discharge instructions that say, 'Avoid cold exposure for sport.' The house had no coat at the door. A girl with a cough slept warm in one place and wheezed in another." She knocked. Ms. Hayes opened. "That's the case." The judge tipped her head. "Ms. Sarah Hayes," she said. "Come forward." She took the stand. The oath landed on her shoulders like a backpack she was finally old enough to notice. Robert kept his voice level. "Did you require your daughter to stand outdoors last winter as discipline?" Sarah stared at her hands. "Yes." "How long?" "A minute." Robert lifted the exhibit we'd saved for this minute. The original doorbell video the neighbor had handed me. Not as a file, but as the device itself, subpoenaed and logged. No transfer, no metadata games. The bailiff set it on the clerk's desk, the screen alive with last January's cold. The judge watched in silence as a small girl in a thin t-shirt hugged herself on a porch at 10 degrees. 11 minutes ticked across the bottom, indifferent to dignity. Sarah swallowed. "It felt shorter," she said. The sentence broke down in the middle and confessed what it was. A wish. Robert didn't lean in for the kill. He just asked the only question left. "Do you believe that was safe?" "No," Sarah said, and it was the truest word I'd heard her say in years. Her voice thinned. "I thought I was building grit." "I was wrong." The judge let the room hold that. "Thank you," she said. "Mr. Marcus Hayes." Marcus slid into the chair with balance beam precision. He met Robert like a fencer. Robert kept to the one lane the law still allowed. "On the night of the retirement party, did you pour anything into Ms. Hayes's wine?" "No," he said. "The lab found vitamin C and tartaric acid in residue recovered from the trash. Do you know how that got there?" "I do not," he said. "And if there was a tremor, it was smaller than the court's appetite for ghost stories." Robert nodded once. "No further questions." The child's attorney stood last. She didn't bring a stack of paper. She brought a thin notebook and a voice that had practice sounding like the middle of a bridge. "I met with Emma," she said. "Separately and in both homes. She is attached to her parents and her grandmother. She reports being cold on the porch last winter and brave. Her word. She also reports liking the chart now on the parents' fridge. Coats, socks, hats. She likes cocoa, rockets, and fractions. She says the exchange lobby is boring in a good way. She told me she knocked on her grandmother's door because she coughed and was scared. When I asked what she needed to feel safe, she said, a coat and a promise. She let that sit. My recommendation is simple and shamelessly practical. Maintain the weekday pickups. Authorize 2 overnights a week at the grandmother's for the winter months. Keep exchanges at the substation. Enter a no punitive cold order. Require both households to complete the class the court ordered. Add a short course of family counseling. The alleged poisoning is outside my scope and unsupported in this record. The cold is not. Marcus's attorney rose. We object to expanding overnights. The judge raised a hand. You may object in writing, counsel. Right now we are erecting windbreaks. She turned to me. Ms. Hayes, you are willing to submit your home to unannounced checks, to comply with medical recommendations, and to keep the child's routine as boring as a metronome? Yes, Your Honor, to Sarah. You are willing to retire the porch as a teaching tool and admit that warmth is not weakness. She didn't look at Marcus. She looked at me. Yes, she said. I am. Marcus's jaw worked. His eyes did math a person shouldn't have to do. The cost of losing, the cost of changing, the cost of staying a person who can live with a number like 11. The judge put her glasses back on and read the order straight to the bone. Pending review at the end of winter term, the child will reside on a schedule as follows. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays after school with Ms. Hayes. Return by 7. 2 overnights per week with Ms. Hayes. Wednesday and Saturday. Returns by 10 a.m. following. All exchanges at the substation. No filming, no disparagement, no punitive exposure to cold. Appropriate winter attire mandatory. Both households will complete the parenting course and attend 6 sessions of family counseling. A pediatric follow-up will occur within 14 days. The child's attorney remains appointed and may visit without notice. Ms. Hayes will maintain a trust for the child's health, education, and safety with an independent trustee. Distributions to parents only for documented expenses. Any violation of the temperature order will result in immediate reconsideration of custody. We will reconvene April 1st. I expect to be bored. Her stamp had the clean thump of a door closing against wind. The bailiff handed out copies. Paper, blessed and fanged. Outside, we all stood in a little knot on the sidewalk as if the building had coughed us out together, and now waited to see if we could walk without a railing. Marcus's lawyer peeled off to take a call. Robert squeezed my shoulder and went to file the trust papers with the clerk, who collects such instruments like charms against calamity. That left the 3 of us. Grandmother, daughter, daughter's husband, looking at one another like people who have all been wronged differently. I won't fight you about coats anymore, Sarah said, the sentence shaped like a straightened nail. Good, I said. We'll save our fights for math. She almost smiled. She likes the chart, she added as if offering me a seedling. We put a sticker on for every day we remember. Remembering is half of love, I said. Marcus came back, tight as wire. We'll comply, he said, and I believed him in the limited way you believe a bridge that has just been inspected. He looked past me to the street like the city might offer him a different story if he stayed long. Enough. This isn't over, he said quietly. Isn't, I agreed. She'll be 8 someday, then 11, then taller than you think. We're all gonna have to keep choosing. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He walked toward the lot with a stride that promised he could keep score and keep going at the same time. That night, Emma fell asleep under the quilt with Jupiter guarding the lamp and the new order in the drawer like a very boring dragon. Sat at the kitchen table and signed the trust documents. Robert had polished until the edges wouldn't cut anyone. The bank thawed their hold with an apology that lived in a template. The utility rep called back to verify that the heat was mine and would remain so. I thanked both of them like people who had almost been used as weapons and decided to be tools instead. We did the class. We did counseling. The counselor's room had a rug with dinosaurs on it. I took that as a sign that the universe sometimes has a sense of humor. Sarah talked about grit. I talked about warmth. Marcus talked about control and fairness, and the way it feels when the axis of a family tilts, and you are the only one who notices. Emma built a rocket out of blocks in the corner and made it take off whenever a sentence landed in the room with a thud. The counselor nodded at her launches, as if they were minutes. January cut the air thin. We obeyed the order. The substation lobby became a season. The sergeant switched to a new crossword book. We stacked small proofs. Gloves worn, cough quiet, homework done, cocoa cooled, bedtimes kept, stickers marching in a neat, proud row. The pediatric follow-up read like a note you tape to the inside of a window. No recurrent wheeze. Caregiver reports compliance with cold avoidance. Child appears well supported in both homes. Continue warm attire and routine. One Saturday at the park, we launched the rocket again. The chute popped late, and the rocket came down hot, veering toward the basketball court where a trio of high schoolers in thin hoodies pretended they weren't cold. Emma ran like a girl who has learned that pursuit is allowed. Sarah jogged after her, slower than she used to be, faster than pride. She reached our granddaughter first and put a hand on her shoulder with the careful pressure you use when you are learning how not to be the weather. Wind caught it. Sarah said, a statement that was also an apology. We can adjust, I said. Little more angle, little less faith in luck. She nodded. I wrote you back, she added, not meeting my eyes. The letter. I read it a dozen times before I could answer. I know, I said. Thank you, she cleared her throat. I can't say I'm sorry for everything yet, she said. I can say I was wrong about cold. I can say I want to be the kind of mother who gets the key you wrote about. You had it the day she was born, I said. You don't need me to hand it to you. You just needed to stop using it to lock doors. She laughed once, the surprised kind. I could use your help, she said. I'll meddle with paperwork and hot chocolate, I said. The rest is you. April arrived in a thaw that turned the substation lobby from courtroom to hallway. We went back to court, and the judge looked pleased to be bored. The child's attorney reported that the coat chart had become a habit, that the porch had retired to a place where bad ideas go when they have finally learned to lie down, that the girl talked about rockets and cocoa and how boring lobbies are beautiful. The judge extended the winter order into a simpler spring schedule. Overnights once a week with me, pickups twice, exchanges still boring, counseling tapered to monthly, no cold discipline turned into a permanent line like an engraving. She did not revisit the party. Ghosts don't file motions. She did not scold. She did not crown winners. She issued a measured peace and told us to come back only if boredom failed. We walked out into a day that smelled like wet soil and the unreasonable hope of grass. The three of us stood there again, women with a girl between us, even when she wasn't physically between us. Sarah reached into the bag and pulled out the green coat, now a little small. She looked at it like the tool it had always been. She's outgrown this one, she said. Good, I said. That's the plan. We bought the next size together. Emma chose blue this time, a color that promised. Sky, she put it on and spun, as if a coat could be a cape if you wore it with enough conviction. Then she looked up at us with Jupiter, tucked under her arm and the unearned mercy children give when you have not earned it yet. Rocket? She asked. Rocket? Sarah said, and she meant it. On the field, the wind did what wind does, made liars of women who think they can predict it. Emma set the angle. I checked the igniter with hands the Holter monitor had once called ordinary. Sarah counted down, voice steady. The rocket leapt, bright and certain as any small maid thing can be, and the three of us tilted our heads at the same moment to follow it. For 2 seconds, it was simple again. Fire, air, a chute opening right on time. Then the rocket drifted slow and cooperative down to Earth. Emma ran. Sarah trotted. I walked fast because I am not done yet. We brought it home together. And that is the only end I ever wanted. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.